Welcome to Uranus. Now, I know some of you might disagree with the name, but I find the actual name quite fun, so I always call it Uranus, as the Greek pronunciation would be. Now, this view might be very unfamiliar to most of us because we don't really expect Uranus to have a ring, but almost all of the outer planets do have a ring system, and Uranus has a ring system that is second only to Saturn, so it's pretty good. Yeah, it even casts a shadow, if I may, right here. See, Uranus is a fascinating planet. It is very cold for one. In fact, its upper atmosphere is one of the coldest places in the solar system, and it is the coldest naturally occurring place in the solar system. Naturally, because scientists on Earth have managed to create very low temperatures, lower than the atmosphere of Uranus, which puts quite an achievement to our scientists, doesn't it? Now, Uranus is unlucky in the fact that it has the least number of moons of all the gas giants out here. The reason for that is unclear, but it's mostly down to luck, in my opinion. It also has a very extreme axis of rotation. If I were to select it, you can read it right here. Essentially, what that means is that Uranus doesn't revolve in its orbit, it actually rolls. This means that the poles of Uranus, this part right here, they get more light than the equator, which is weird. Imagine India being as cold as Russia and Russia being as hot as India. That's similar to what's happening here. Uranus has a few moons, as I said, the least of all the gas giants, out of which one is my favorite. This one is called Titania. Now, Titania or Titania, as you want to call it, is a large moon, obviously. It's the 8th largest moon in the solar system and is, well, created, obviously. It has a tenuous atmosphere and it's one of the largest moons of Uranus. I quite like it because it resembles our own moon, just in a different shade. Now, I always personalize Uranus as a very, well, distant kind of a place. It doesn't really do much, it just stays with itself and is content with it. However, the winds on Uranus, now those are not content with themselves, they constantly outdo. Winds here are extremely fast, 500 kph sometimes. These are winds enough to blow you apart if you were to stand here. And just like the other gas giants, it has no surface. There's literally nothing here but hydrogen, helium, gases, and nothing else. But after this, we move to an extremely important planet, the last of the planets that we know of. So here we are at the last planet of the solar system, Neptune. Cold, frigid, gaseous. Neptune is very large and is very cold as well. Not as cold as Uranus, but cold nonetheless. It has storms just like Jupiter does, right here. And it has rings just like Uranus and Neptune do. But not as extensive, of course. One interesting fact about Neptune is that because it is so far away from the Sun, an year on Neptune lasts as long as 40 years would do on Earth, which means that an average human would only see 2 or so of Neptune years before their life is over. Neptune has a lot of features that are similar to or a combination of features from other gas planets, which is pretty interesting because this seems like a mashup of all of them, a remix of few. Now, Neptune has few large moons, as you can see, but the most major one, and the one I find most interesting, is this Triton. Triton is huge, and it has an atmosphere, being the seventh largest moon in the solar system. Does allow you that. Titan's atmosphere is mostly nitrogen, and it glows very brightly. Look like this. It's mostly icy and frigid on the surface, but it's still pretty unique as far as moons are concerned. And there's a good reason for that, actually. If I will show you the orbit, look at this. Now, notice that the direction of Triton is opposite to all the moons out here. In fact, it is retrograde, which means completely opposite. The reason for that is that Triton isn't actually a naturally formed moon of Neptune. Triton was most likely an object, a dwarf planet, if you will. This dwarf object lied beyond Neptune, but somehow got caught into Neptune's orbit and was tightly bound by its massive gravitational pull. Since the sun doesn't affect the gravity much over here, it does still affect it, but the extent is very less, which means that Neptune has a huge hemisphere, and that's the reason that Neptune caught Triton, such a big rock over here. Now, Triton, being a captured object, is actually in a decaying orbit. What I mean when I say that is that its orbit is slowly shrinking. Now, while the shrinkage is minuscule, soon it will be torn into a ring. However, when I say soon, that's actually a very, very long soon. I said soon in astronomical terms. It would take nearly 3.6 billion years for this to break apart and be made into a ring. But when it does happen, the rings of Neptune will most likely be even grander than Saturn. They'll be larger, more spread out, and much, much thicker and visible. Who knows, we might be able to see Neptune from the naked eye now, if we're still around by then, and if the Earth is still around by then. Now, as I mentioned right now, Neptune has a huge hemisphere, which means that it can capture a lot of objects. Then it should come as no surprise that when I zoom out, we see this, a huge, huge web of objects that were captured by Neptune. And this doesn't just stop there. Neptune affects the orbits of a lot of things outside. It is more like a prince or a duke of the outer solar system. It controls the orbits and forces them into directions and places that they wouldn't be without it. In fact, Pluto's orbit is also affected by Neptune. Whenever it passes closer to Neptune, its speed increases. Over the millions of years, many objects have had their orbits either shaken or deformed by Neptune. Now we are mostly done with the main objects in the solar system, but there's really an immense amount to be looked at. The solar system is huge, and however much time I give to it is pretty much not enough, because there will always be more stuff to be found. And the solar system is huge, as you can see. this right here. There is a lot of stuff going on over here, and we'll take a look at some of it later on. Thank you for watching.